So, a couple of months ago I made a video giving all you new killers some beginner tips on how to improve your killer experience, and the first thing that I need to do is thank you all so much for watching that. That video is one of the best performing on my channel and I really do appreciate you all giving it the time of day. So today I'm going to be bringing you 20 more, but also make sure that if you haven't watched the first part yet, go and watch that one first so that you can understand some context to the tips that I'm about to give in this one. Now for these tips, they are once again not going to be specific to any killer, but more killer in general. So remember to like and subscribe if this helped, as 99% of the people watching aren't subscribed, just saying. But without further ado, let's get into 20 more killer tips to help you and your killer gameplay. Now tip number 1 is to try and use perks that complement your killer's power. Now this is something that will come with time, but for example, if you're the spirit, don't be using too many aura revealing perks, as when you're in your power you won't see them. Get used to your killer's strengths and try and find perks that enhance your gameplay as best as possible without weakening it, because even though some perks may seem amazing on the surface, for specific killers they may actually hurt you more than they help you. Now tip number 2 is to take items that survivors bring into consideration. When in the lobby, get used to recognising what items they're bringing and seeing how they will effectively use them. If you see a flashlight, prepare to be blinded and potentially have some flashlight saves. If you see a medkit, try not to leave them injured, as they can just heal and negate all the pressure that you just added to them, so make sure you keep in clock on what they're bringing into the trial. And speaking of being blinded, tip number 3 is if you are scared of being flashlight blinded, simply face a wall if you can. Survivors cannot blind you if they do not have a clear line of sight, so make it tricky for them by facing walls, trees and rocks. Tip number 4 is to get rid of boons as soon as possible. In the last video I told you how to recognise if a boon is in place, however I really need to stress how much you need to get rid of them. They provide a phenomenal advantage to survivors in the game if they're used correctly, and if they are, it can almost be game changing. So if you see one, get it gone as soon as you comfortably can. And if you know who is placing them, try to maybe get rid of them sooner as well, so that other survivors can't benefit from their perk as much. Now for tip number 5, sometimes when carrying a survivor, other survivors will swarm you and try to protect the person in your arms. Use these body blocking survivors' altruism against them. If possible, just hit and hook anyway, but if you think that if you hit too many and they'll eventually get off your shoulder, simply drop the person that you're carrying and pressure the rest of the survivors until a time where you can safely pick up and hook as normal. Now for tip number 6, this is something that we all do, but don't overuse or rely too much on your power. Sometimes relying on your whipper's nemesis or your shredder's demo for too long can actually hurt you in the long run. Your powers should be used to enhance your gameplay, and normal attacking is still a very much great tool to use. So don't overcomplicate things and make sure you're getting those easy hits and not overusing it. Your power should be something that you use to enhance your gameplay, and normal attacking is still very much a great tool to use. So don't overcomplicate things and easy hits by trying to use your power too much. Now tip number 7 is to not be afraid to slug for extra pressure. Sometimes depending on the circumstance you may actually keep a survivor down on the floor for a couple of extra seconds whilst you pressure a generator or another survivor that's close by. Don't be afraid to. Some survivors love to force the rulebook down killers' throats, but this is completely viable and sometimes needed for good game pressure. And speaking of down survivors, tip number 8 is to be very wary of survivors that are downed in front of pallets. An undropped pallet is a downed survivor's best chance of getting off the killer whilst a teammate stuns him. So before you pick up, just make sure that there are no survivors close, or just have a quick look just to make sure that it's truly safe for you to pick up, so you don't immediately lose a survivor that you just downed and lose all of the pressure that you just gained. Tip number 9 is about maps. Now some maps are absolutely amazing for killer and others are absolutely terrible. Depending on what killer you're playing and what perks that you're using and what perks that the survivors are using, get used to the map's layouts and size so that you know how best to tackle every map that you get placed on. And now we are halfway through, so with tip number 10, with the new MMR system that is in Dead by Daylight, for every game you win, your MMR will rise. So after some wins in a row, you will potentially keep facing tougher and tougher survivors. So don't get annoyed at losing, as kind of expect this to happen if you do go on a little bit of a win streak. So speaking of mentality around playing, a great way I've found to keep your chin up and enjoy the game you're playing is to pretend that you're playing against your best mates. Compliment them, give them credit for smart plays that they make, and it will take the stress and the frustration out of it so much so. And if they're being toxic, like the teabagging or flashlight clicking at you, this will also really much help with that, as it kind of turns it into a friendly competition rather than a I can't believe they're bullying me or vice versa. It just helps you keep your chin up with a good mindset so that you don't get dumbed down by it and you can still perform at your best. Now for tip number 12, survivors that use the perk Decisive Strike may force you to try and eat it by either hopping into lockers or being oddly aggressive to you when they've just been unhooked. However, don't really actually be afraid of eating DSs if needed. Now this doesn't necessarily mean to tunnel them, but if they force you to eat a DS wastefully, they are now only down to 3 perks that they can have, and you know that they cannot use that against you in the future. And for new players, Laurie especially will probably do this the most, as this is her teachable perk. Now this next tip is a strat that I kind of used to use on console and still use on PC to this day, but if you can record your gameplay, that would be amazing. That way if you struggle with a certain game, you can go back and evaluate what you did wrong. This may give you some amazing insights into where you struggle and what you need to do to get better with every single game, and it honestly helps more than you think. I still do it to this day and I have got over 4,000 hours on the game, so get used to this, and if you can, try and do this. Now another tip for the start of your game is to get used to looking at gen and hook placements, as you can never have too much knowledge on a map and what you need to protect easier. So understanding gen placements and hook placements to try and keep in mind when you chase and hook survivors, as that way you can use it to your advantage throughout the game and get as much pressure as possible by hooking people in the right place and applying pressure to the right gens. Now 15, you may play the game fine and not do anything to annoy anyone whatsoever. However, survivors still may insult you and claim that you were either tunneling or camping or slugging on and whatnot, the list goes on. But just move on, it doesn't matter. After 2 more games, both you and the survivor that you faced will forget it, so don't dwell on the survivor assault and just carry on doing what you're doing. For the most part, some people needlessly throw out insults just because they lost, and that isn't your problem. Tip number 16 is, once you get used to survivor movement, try to experiment with mind gaming. Now don't overuse it, but get used to double backing and like hiding your stain, as the sooner that you can get used to this, the further it will take you. Now you can never start too early, but as I said, don't get too caught up on it too soon, and make sure that you get the basics and basic movement down first. Now for new players of the game, for both Survivor and Killer, they may not have access to a wide array of perks. Try to recognise potential perks based on the survivors that they choose. For example, Nia's will be much more prone to use Balanced Landing, and David's much more prone to use Dead Hard. So if you can try to identify this sooner, you can adjust yourself mid-game and it will be a lot easier to counter and get those downs. Tip number 18, in the realms, some tiles are much stronger than others. So try to force survivors into weaker zones, or if preferable, dead zones. This may be as simple as you just pushing left so that the survivors go right, but pushing survivors away from strong loops like shacks or main buildings can really help your gameplay in the long run and not give them any viable options to escape the chase. Now the most important tip of all is, don't forget to have fun. If you're not winning all the time, don't worry, just try and have fun and learn in the process, and a great way I do this myself is to give yourself different objectives. For example, if you struggle with the Huntress, say to yourself at the start of the game, if I hit 3 hatchets, I'll class this as a personal win. It can do wonders with the mindset and help with your practice if there's elements of killers that you're not 100% with yet. And finally, if you really want to get better with a killer, if you can, try and get a friend to join you and practice in custom lobbies for stress-free, pure practice environments. In here you can run tiles, get used to powers, and just practice with what you maybe might struggle with. And if you can, practice with somebody who also knows what they're doing a little bit more, as they can potentially help steer you in the right direction as well. But guys, once again, that is it. I really do hope you enjoyed it and was able to take something away from this. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it will help so much more than you know, and it is the best way to make sure that you catch all my future educational videos and Dead by Daylight content. But I'm rambling on now, so once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great morning, noon, evening or night, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, bye bye for now.